Hello YouTube and fellow DC Comic fans, I'm Keith One Shot, and today we are going to quickly review Nightwing The New Order, Issue 6, and to give you a little bit of backdrop on the story to catch you up with what's going on in Nightwing The New Order. It is an Elseworld story that takes place in an alternate future in DC Comics, so it involves a war that starts happening with these metahuman abilities, and things start getting crazy, and they start building up and getting hectic. Batman dies, so then Dick Grayson decides to use this bomb that Batman has that's Apocalypse technology that will nullify the metahuman gene in metahuman abilities, which will get rid of their superpowers. So ultimately what happens is Nightwing decides to set this bomb off in Metropolis during this great battle, and everybody loses their metahuman abilities. We flash forward to the future of 2040, I believe, where Nightwing is the leader of this group called the Crusaders, which is pretty much this Minority Report style government agency that deals with anybody who still has metahuman abilities who are like outside of the blast radius of the bomb, because if you still have metahuman abilities, you have to register with the government and take power suppressor pills. And if you end up finding out that if the suppressor pills don't work on them, then they put these people into stasis until they can figure out how to rid them of their metahuman genes. So Nightwing is going along with this, which is a little ridiculous. The first story ends up ending with Nightwing finding out that his own son, Jake Grayson, has metahuman abilities, as his teacher saw it happen in the school and promised not to tell anybody about it. Alright, now Nightwing ends up partnering up with Mr. Terrific, who is working for the Crusaders as well, but is Nightwing's friend, to try to stop this from happening. But then what ends up happening is the rest of the Crusader organization, which is run by Kate Kane, formerly Batwoman, they find out about this. So they come after Nightwing in his house, Grayson in his house, and they take Jake away from him. And Nightwing tries to save him and does the best that he can, and then ultimately they end up with Jake, and Nightwing then goes to the Batcave, which at this point is a museum of sorts, but he sneaks into a background area and gets his old black and blue Nightwing suit because he's going to go save his son. He ends up running into John Stewart, who still has his Green Lantern ring, but he works for the government. He's kind of like their attacker, you know what I mean? He goes after strong-willed metahumans because there's also a resistance force, because there's other people with metahuman powers and they are a resistance. And we end up finding out that it's pretty much the Titans are the resistance group, because Starfire is a part of it, and Starfire is Jake Grayson's mother, because Dick Grayson had his kid with Starfire, and she still has her powers. And then you end up seeing Wally West, the original Wally West. He still has his powers. I believe Cyborg and Beast Boy are there as well. And then they also have Lois Lane with them, who, believe it or not, has a Blue Lantern ring. So that's pretty cool. And then you end up finding out that Dick Grayson still doesn't trust these guys, and they don't trust him because he still believes in this system. But he wants to get his kid, and he wants to take him out of the United States because other countries don't have this legislation where you can't have metahuman abilities. So basically, they end up getting Jake back. They break into the system where they do the stasis on everybody, because Mr. Freeze is putting people under the stasis. He's one of the people who work for the government. They end up getting Jake Grayson back. Nightwing does work with the Titan group, and then they end up running into, these are over the course of 1, 2, 3, 4 issues, they end up running into Superman, who is somehow still alive. He doesn't have his powers anymore, unlike some of the other Resistance members. He's got an old crazy beard. It looks pretty awesome, but Superman's there, and he's with Lex Luthor, and they're trying to work on a cure that will bring the metahuman powers back, believe it or not. So that's pretty crazy. So this whole time, they've got the Crusaders led by Kate Kane trying to come at them all and trying to take Jake back and trying to end the resistance. Nightwing still doesn't like any of the Titans, and he just wants to get his son out of there, and he still wants to turn them over, which is crazy to believe that Nightwing wants to turn over all the metahumans who were all once his friends, because he kind of betrayed the superhero community when he let off this bomb back in 2028, but the rest of the world sees Dick Grayson and Nightwing as a hero. And then they pass this legislation because Nightwing used Bruce Wayne's money that he inherited to help fund the legislation to get this stuff in action. Alfred didn't agree with that, and Alfred ended up dying when the Crusaders originally took Jake from Nightwing's house, which was crazy. It was really good. That's pretty much what happened in the first 1 through 5. There's a lot more that happened, obviously, and some really great fights and some more character building stuff that I might have skipped or missed over. But that brings us to this next issue where they end up finding out that Jake's powers can be the cure to bring back everybody else's powers. And Lex discovered this as Mr. Freeze shot Wally West with a freeze gun, and it took his powers from him. But Lex was able to get Wally's powers back through using Jake's powers, and he ends up reworking the bomb technology into this new blast radius fueled by Jake's powers that could give everybody their metahuman powers back. So that's where we start Nightwing the New Order number 6. I thought it was very important to give you a quick little catch-up on 1 through 5, and even then, I do recommend you reading them, as they're great issues with amazing art, and it's really fun. We start this issue off with Starfire going to see Jake in his room because they are all in a Titans base right now, all the Titans and Jake Grayson and Dick Grayson as well. And he still doesn't like Starfire, Jake, because even though that's his mother, she left him for most of his life because she left with the metahuman stuff started happening, so she had to leave because she didn't agree with taking the pills, and she didn't want to go on stasis, and so she wanted to have her superpowers. And so Jake doesn't like his mom because she still left him at the end of the day, and Dick Grayson raised him for most of his life. Jake Grayson also does look up to superheroes a lot. He loves superheroes, and he's always looking back to the past, and he's excited to be here as part of this, but he doesn't like his mom still. So in this, we see all the Titans and Lex Luthor and Wally. Like I said, Lex gives Wally his powers back, and then Dick Grayson wakes up his son at night, and he tells him that he's going to go show him something. And he tells him, yeah, it's over here, because at the end of issue 5, Grayson worked out a deal with Kate Kane that him and Jake can leave the country if he actually turns over and rats out all of the Titans and where their base is. So Dick Grayson is leading Jake towards the exit, and as they open up the exit, you see Kate Kane, you see Azrael, you see Captain Cold, it might be Citizen Cold, you see Captain Atom, and you see John Stewart, and then the Crusaders as well, which is their government organization. And Jake is pissed off about this. He's like, what the hell? But then Nightwing knocks him out and puts him to sleep, and then sure enough, they all leave, and John Stewart tells him, congratulations, Dick, you saved the world again. And then the Crusaders and all of them are going to storm the base because Grayson turned off all their security. We then see Lois Lane making a drink for herself. Her and Starfire are having a conversation, and then sure enough, all the Crusaders break into the building, and John Stewart tells them, you guys should just stand down now. And Lois says, yo, I'm not standing down. You forget how these rings work, John. So a big explosion happens, and they all start fighting. Meanwhile, Superman and Lex Luthor figure this out because Lex is obviously very smart, and even though Nightwing shut down some of the security, he still has his computers, and he ultimately says to Wally that he has this robot army because they're like, oh, you got a robot, Lex? And he's like, hey, my dear boy, I wouldn't be Lex Luthor if I didn't have robots. So he actually has an army of his green and purple Lex Luthor Hulkbuster looking armor thing, and so he sends those out. We then go back to Dick Grayson and Jake, who are driving away in a car from the scene, and Jake is not happy about this, and he's letting his dad know. And Grayson just pretty much tells him, he's like, yo bro, you think that the world is broken now. The world was broken before. It was crazy. It was dark. It was always broken. And he tells them that you look back at videos and you're nostalgic about this, but that wasn't a good time. And I made that decision because I needed to make it, and things got dark. And you need to realize that, alright? He had to do something to make a meaningful change, is what Grayson tries telling his son. And then his son ends up telling him that he's sorry that he wishes that he could have been. He wishes that he could have been to his father what Dick Grayson was to Bruce. He wishes that he could have been a better Robin to Nightwing. He wishes that he could have inspired him, to show him the light in the dark, to keep going, and to give him hope. And this conversation between Nightwing and his son ends up making Nightwing realize that what he's done is a mistake, that what he's been doing is a mistake, that he needs to fix things, because this future world that he wants with no metahuman powers, well, that's his wife, that's his family, that's his son. They have metahuman powers, and you turned your back on the superhero community, bro, for a few years, well, a few decades, because this happened in 2028, and this story takes place in 2040. So we then go back to the Titans base, where we see this amazing battle happening, where you see the Lex Luthor robots battling a few of the Crusaders, battling Captain Atom. You see John Stewart, Green Lantern, battling Blue Lantern, Lois Lane in the sky. You see Wally West taking on Captain Cold. You see Starfire battling Red Tornado. And you see Azrael battling more of the Lex Luthor robots. So that's a pretty cool fight. You see more of John Stewart battling Lois Lane and everything that happens there. And somehow Kate Kane is able to shoot Wally West. He falls down. Then Red Tornado is battling Starfire on the next panel, and that is pretty cool. And he tells her that she needs to surrender, but Lois Lane ends up saving Starfire from Red Tornado, pretty much terminating her. And then the Titans start to regroup, and they don't know how much longer they can hold this back before Red Tornado and John Stewart and Captain Atom get back into their base and start attacking them again. We then see, because they're trying to, Lex Luthor is going to give Superman back his powers now with the machine that he's been building. But Jake is the key, but he still has some of Jake's energy, in which he's going to try to bring Superman's powers back. It's just going to take a long time. So the Titans are trying to defend them and give them more time. And then sure enough, right when things look bleak, Grayson shows up with Jake, his son, and he's like, here guys, I'm here to fix my wrongs, and I'm here to fight for you. You need to get Jake to Lex so he can give Clark back his powers, and Superman can help us out here. So Starfire says, thank you and all that. And then he says, yo, are you still ready to throw down? And they all start fighting again with Kate Kane and Red Tornado, Captain Cold, Captain Atom, Azrael, John Stewart, and the rest of Crusaders. And it's a pretty cool battle that happens there. We then go inside of the lab because Wally brought Jake to Superman and Lex, and Lex puts Jake into the machine with Superman on the other side of the machine, and Jake's powers fuel the machine to give Clark back his powers. Clark gets his powers back, but then he falls down, which is weird, because he gets his powers back and he seems strong again. And Lex even tells him, my greatest achievement, I am your god, Superman, because he gave him his powers back. Then suddenly Superman falls down and Lex hits a button and the whole room goes red, and we find out that Lex doesn't want to be an unequal again, because Lex hated being inferior to Superman in that regard in the past. So he's going to figure, if we're bringing metahuman powers back, then we're going to be a level playing field. He's going to set off a bomb, which is the reverse of the bomb that Grayson set off, because this bomb will give everybody metahuman powers. But it'll also, because of the size of the bomb, destroy Metropolis as it's under the base. So Superman and Jake decide that they need to stop this bomb from going off. So Superman asks Jake if he can fly like his mother can. Jake's unsure of himself, but he's willing to help Superman. We then go outside to the battle again, where it's a great panel. The art is actually really great in this book in general, and all the battles are really well done. So we see everybody battling outside again, which is pretty cool. Starfire takes out Brady, which is one of the Crusaders. Then we see Superman and Jake blast through the building, and then Superman starts shooting lasers down all around where they are in the facility. And Jake tells everybody that Superman is going to carve out the bomb, he's going to carve out a big ass crater in the ground and lift the bomb out, because the bomb is the size of the city. Well, a portion of the city rather. So ultimately what happens is everybody now, finally, the Crusaders and everybody realize that this is a bigger threat than what they're battling about currently. So John Stewart takes Jake, he takes Captain Atom, and he takes Red Tornado, and he takes Lois Lane to help Superman out with lifting this huge chunk of rock, which is the planet and the bomb. Well, not the planet, but it's the city with the bomb attached to it. And it's this huge, there's a few building wide crater. It looks actually really intense, and they're all with their powers, and Superman at the bottom physically lifting it up above the city and getting it as high as they can. But eventually the bomb does explode while they're all lifting it, and everybody's face is in shock and they're in panic as they think they all just died. And then sure enough, we see the blast go off and there are no casualties. Everybody comes down. Jake has a hug with his parents, and it's a really great moment, and everybody's happy, smiling. And then we get the end resolution to the story, which is they took the knowledge that Lex Luthor gave them, and superhuman powers started to slowly come back in the world, but it was still illegal to have metahuman abilities for the next 5 years or so until they could slowly change the legislation with the money from the Alfred Pennyworth Foundation, because Alfred put his money in because he always wanted metahuman powers, and him and Dick had a falling out because he didn't agree with Grayson getting rid of the metahuman powers. He wanted the people to be the people and the heroes to be the heroes, and that was one of the arguments they had in chapter 1 of the book. But either way, legislation starts changing back over, and that's pretty cool. And then Kate Kane retires from the Crusaders, but the Crusaders do still live on to help. They still go on and help regulate metahuman powers in a different way, a less strict way. And this lady Liz, who's in the book, she's one of the Crusaders who helps Grayson get out, and she gives Cyborg information from the inside. She's a good guy. She ends up getting promoted, and that's a good sign. Jake Grayson ends up graduating. His parents try to be friends as much as they can for the for the remainder of their lives, and they do the best that they can. Then we end up finding out that Grayson spends the rest of his life running a school for metahumans, and he's pretty much Charles Xavier. He runs a school teaching people how to use their powers, and he ends up doing this as in a way to atone for all the wrongs that he did and all the things that he's ashamed of. Because looking back now, he wishes he didn't do that. He wishes he didn't do the bomb. So that's pretty cool that he then ends up training them. We then see that the ultimate narrator of the story has been Jake Grayson when he's an older person, and he's telling the story of his dad and letting you know who his dad was. And he refers to a quote from the beginning of the first book where he talks about we always look back to see who our parents are because we want to get glimpses of who they were before they had us, so we can learn a little bit about ourselves. And he says that hopefully one day that this will help you understand things the way they are, and why he is the way that he is, and why he named him after the greatest person that he ever knew. Because ultimately we find out that Jake has been telling this story to a recording device. So Nightwing the New Order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, Jake Grayson has actually been narrating to a recording device because he's telling his son the story of his father, the story of everything that happened to Nightwing, that people love him and people hate him, and people see him as a savior, and they see him as someone who got rid of metahuman powers, but who also fought to bring them back and to teach people ultimately. And we see that Jake Grayson has a son with his wife, and that the neighborhood kids woke the son up, but it was okay because they're all metahuman kids, and they're all outside playing, and Jake Grayson and his wife are happy that their son is going to be the next generation that live in this positive, happy world always, and he wants him to let him know about the struggles that it took to get there and to get to this place. And that's Nightwing the New Order. It's a very great book. I'm sorry I skipped over probably a lot of stuff or oversimplified things, condensed, missed things. I've read this book over the course of, it's once a month. It's 6 issues, amazing art, great story. It's Elseworld. I definitely recommend it. I'm sorry about my voice. I've been sick for a week or so, but I'm still doing these videos because it's fun for me, and I like comics, and I have a passion for it, and I want to talk about them. I have a dramatic reading series, which you can actually check out, Nightwing the New Order, issue 1, that I did a few months back when it first came out. I did a dramatic reading of issue 1. I haven't done the rest of the book, so I wanted to take this time to do a review and a recap and talk about this series because I had a lot of fun with it. This thing ended up being more of a podcasty, talky review, explanation, but I really like Nightwing New Order, and I thought it was worth my time to talk about it, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you stayed for this long, I truly appreciate it. That means a lot. Thank you very much, and if you're not a member already, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. I'm building this channel out, and I really appreciate it. I'm Keith the One Shot. Take care, and have a great day. Goodbye.